Scott. Ask Scott.
Hey, Scott, this is Russ. I think it's a great podcast. I really appreciate the information and the ability to ask questions. So today's questions that I have were about podcast number 32, the one where you made a $1,080 mistake in your shipping. And I had just some further clarifying questions that I wanted to ask. I think I'm just missing some things. So in that episode, you mentioned that there was an agent that you used. Is this a supplier, or is this a customs broker, or somebody from FedEx, or just who is that person that you refer to? Also, you quoted a price of about $6 per kilogram is normal for shipping from DHL, but then you said that you generally use FedEx. So I just wanted to know, where does DHL come in? Is that maybe your supplier's preferred shipper, or is that yours, or do you use them sometimes, or just where do the roles play out? I know this was a specific mistake that you made this whole podcast, but is it possible to give a little bit more background about how you coordinate your shipping in general? Do you have everything sent to your home? If you need to bundle some things, do you use an inspection service, or do you do it yourself, perhaps using family or friends or helpers? Do you always have it shipped to you, or do you sometimes have it go directly to Amazon's warehouse? At what point do you think it makes sense to use a freight forwarder and ship by sea? I know it's slower, but it seems to be about a third of the price. Couldn't you just plan for that and order more units more often to allow for the slower delivery? It seems like the cost savings would justify paying the freight forwarder. And I believe Will Chernlin mentioned that his costs about $500, so it would seem to pay for itself. The other questions I have are just, what labeling or inserting tasks have you found your suppliers are willing to do for you, even prior to you ever receiving the shipment? And also, if you could just go over who are the players that are important in the shipping process and what are their roles. You mentioned in this podcast that you're not sure a freight forwarder would have caught the mistake that you made of going over $2,500. If not, what is the real role of the freight forwarder, or would a customs broker have found that mistake? Would you need a customs broker in addition to a freight forwarder, and do their roles overlap? So these are just the kind of background questions I just have. If you could kind of go over your whole process itself, so I could see what you do and to see if it would make sense for me as well. Thanks again, Scott. I really appreciate you listening to this long question, and I appreciate the time that you always take in answering everybody's questions. So thanks again, and I'll be listening for your answer.
Hey, Russ, thank you so much for the questions. I should have said that before I even listened to that, because I knew the one I was going to do next, and I knew that you had multiple questions in there. I probably could have did a whole episode on Ask Scott for just those questions. No, I'm just kidding. These are good questions, and I'll kind of like give you the condensed version, and I might not have been clear when I went through this. A couple things I want to mention though, and that is, I called it my $1,000+ mistake, right? $1,000 and some change mistake. And it was a mistake in the sense that, and those of you that haven't listened to that episode, basically what had happened was I had my supplier ship the items, and what they did is they included the cost of shipping in my invoice, and because of that, it took my price of $2,300, let's say, and it made it $5,000 or $6,000, whatever it was at the time. And because of that, when it came through customs, they looked at that as though it was a $6,000 invoice, and because of that, that's what I had to pay customs on. When technically, you really only need to pay the customs, at least from my understanding, is on the actual product itself, not the shipping. So because of that, it was a mistake on my supplier. They shouldn't have did that, and I had to eat that cost. Now, some people say, well, why didn't you go after your supplier? Because I have a good relationship with them, and it was a mistake, and I get it. And yes, it cost me some money. Each unit now, I had to add another 20 cents to it, or that's what I lost from each unit, about 20 cents. So it wasn't a huge deal, but it was a learning thing. And here's the thing. You might not be able to control this once you get to a certain level. Like, you may not be able to break it up into certain shipments to get that to that $2,500 mark. And the reason why you want that $2,500 mark, at least as of the time that I'm recording this, is because using DHL, and I'm not sure about FedEx, but DHL is a $2,500 thing, and that just might be a customs thing. When it hits the $2,500 mark, it goes to a different line of customs, where it goes through more of a manual type thing. And because of that, it increases your percentage that you're going to pay in customs. So what I've been doing is basically just making sure that my orders are within that $2,500 range. And then that way there, it doesn't get held up and all that stuff. So the other thing that you mentioned was that I used FedEx. I don't think I ever mentioned that. And if I did, I was wrong. I've never used FedEx to get a product here. I've used it for samples at times, but I've never used them to bring or have the order shipped from China to my location. The other thing is, yes, I deliver it. I have it delivered right to my home office here. Then I can go through it. I can inspect it. And I don't go through everything. I just pop open a few boxes and then inspect it that way. So that's kind of the process. And my supplier, my agent, I'm doing air quotes because it's basically the same thing. She is working for the supplier, but she's the agent, and she handles all that, the shipping stuff. So she just basically uses her DHL account or for their company, and then they take care of sending it. It's billed to me. So I will pay that in the fee, the 30% down, and then the 70% when it's shipped. That all kind of gets grouped into that. So it's like they give me the lump sum of what I owe, and then I pay that, and then that's all built into the cost. Then once it gets here and it goes through customs, DHL is they're either going to pay up to $100 for you without having to stop the process. So if you have an order that's only going to be $80 for customs, they'll send it to your home office, and then you'll pay the customs fee. They'll bill you in the mail. If it hits the $100 mark or over, they'll hold the order. They'll email you or call you and say that you have to make a payment. You can literally make it online. It takes 2 seconds. There's a way bill that they call it. And then from there, you'll enter your credit card information, the amount that you owe, hit it. The next day, it'll be released. It'll automatically get shipped. It'll get released from that point on. So that's kind of the entire process. So really, I don't use a freight forwarder. I'm not using anything by boat and sea. And I think you mentioned also, like, when is it time? It's time when you're ready to actually do the whole by sea thing and the freight forward thing. So yes, when you do that, you will want a freight forwarding company, and yes, you will be saving money because it's a lot cheaper to do that, but it is going to take longer. So depending on how quickly you want your inventory, so you are going to probably want to buy more. So when you're buying more, it's going to be more capital that you're going to have to invest. Plus, if you don't ship that all into Amazon, maybe you want to ship half of it in and then half of it you want a warehouse, you're going to pay for that. So there's all of these other things that you have to think about. I want to streamline the process. I want to keep it simple. And for me right now, what's working is I have it shipped here to my home office. From here, I get to inspect it. I pay money. I pay UPS, but it's Amazon's fee, which is really, really cheap. Literally, I think for 30 pounds, it might cost me, depending on what warehouse it's going to, it might cost me $6 to $10. So literally, if I add that to, if I add it to the bottom line of what each unit would cost me, it might add 10 or 12 cents. So it's not that big of a deal. And I get to inspect it. I recently had one of my students that actually went ahead, had it shipped to him. He had an issue with one of the parts. He had to just repackage it. So he did that all manually, which took time, but it saved him from having to have the stuff shipped back to him to repackage it and then ship it back. So it definitely, in the beginning, I definitely recommend doing that. Now, if you want to go for it, go FBA all the way, send it from China to them, go for it. Maybe you want to do it on a small test order. But that's just what I've done. So I hope that that's kind of clarified a few things. Again, when you do want to jump into the whole going, shipping by sea, you will save money, but it is going to introduce some more things, right? You're going to have freight forwarding. You're going to have, I just recently got off an interview with a gentleman that recently had that all done. And I think the freight forwarder found out that there was like 30% of it was like damaged, and, maybe it was, rusted. I think it had some rusting going on in it, and the product was metal. So because of that, they had to hold up the order. Now, if that all got shipped into Amazon, you're paying for it. And then you got to pay for it to get shipped out of there. So I've heard both sides of it. I've heard some people have really good luck with it, and I've heard people say that they haven't had good luck with it. So totally your call. I'm not here to say one way is better than the other. I'm just saying what works for me and what I'm comfortable doing. So I hope that that's answered your question. Again, just keep it simple. That's my recommendation, especially if you're starting from square one. If you're just starting, learn the process, cut down on any obstacles that could hold you up, and that could be shipping, and that could be freight forwarding and all that stuff. Now, if you are internationally selling, if you're selling let's say that you're in Australia, you may have to do the whole freight forwarding and going to FBA. You may have to do that, but you may want to do a smaller order to start with to test that process. If you guys want to submit a question, head over to theamazingseller.com/ask, and you can do that. I want to also, again, remind you guys, if you're brand new and this is your first time to the show, I want to welcome you. I love hanging out with you guys. This is just awesome to be able to virtually connect like this. And that's why I love the Ask Scott sessions. But if you are brand new and you're just getting your feet wet and you don't understand the entire process, the entire business model, I would recommend attending one of my live free workshops. This is where I break it down for you in 5 phases: how to pick a market and a product, how to source it, how to do a pre-launch, how to do a launch, how to promote the product, and everything in between. We go over that on a workshop, and we go through every single thing. We also do live Q&A. So if you want to attend one of them, I would love to invite you to the next one, and you can register for the next one by heading over to theamazingseller.com/workshop, and you can register there for an upcoming workshop. Well, hey there. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of Ask Scott. Now, that was just a highlight from one of our full episodes where I generally answer 3 to 4 questions on a podcast. If you want to go back and listen to all of the past archives of not just the Ask Scott session, but all of the full episodes where I do interviews with top Amazon sellers, people starting from scratch and building a business, if you want to listen to any of those episodes, head over to theamazingseller.com and you can find all of that over there. You can also find details there on how you can ask your own question and get it aired on an upcoming Ask Scott session and possibly see it here on YouTube or just on the podcast. All right, so definitely head over to theamazingseller.com. There's tons of resources over there for you to be able to build your e-commerce and Amazon business. So definitely go check that out. Now, I just wanted to remind you one thing before I let you go. There's a lot of information out there and some of it is really, really good. What I want you to remember is you have to not just consume the information, you have to actually apply that information. So take this information that you learned here today and apply it to your business. And this way here, you can get results. As my shirt says, I wear it almost daily. Take action. We'll see you guys.